Have you ever caught yourself admiring another person's success and pondering how they achieved it? We witness the highlights, promotions, trophies, accolades, applause, but we seldom see the quiet, often invisible process behind it all. We rarely observe the early mornings, the self-doubt, the decisions to persist when no one is watching. This is because we've been conditioned to view growth as a result rather than a journey. But here's the reality. Growth is not an event. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a mindset, a way of approaching life every single day. It's a decision to keep evolving, a belief that you are a work in progress and always will be. And that's not something to fix, it's something to embrace. We live in a world that sells us shortcuts. 30 days to success, lose 10 pounds in a week, become an overnight sensation. The marketing is attractive because it's easy to believe that transformation comes from one big change. But ask anyone who has actually built something meaningful, whether it's a career, a relationship, or a reputation, and they'll tell you it wasn't one big moment. It was hundreds of small ones repeated over time, quietly and intentionally. Improving yourself by 1% every day doesn't sound exciting at first. It doesn't make headlines. It's not dramatic, but it's powerful because it speaks to the truth of how real change happens, not with a bang, but with a choice. A choice to get up 10 minutes earlier just to breathe and think. A choice to read one more page, ask one more question, listen a little longer. A choice to stop saying "I can't" and start saying "what if?" A choice to stop scrolling and start creating. A choice to pause and reflect instead of reacting in anger. These choices don't come with applause, but they shape who you become. Think about the most impactful people in your life, not just the most successful, but the ones who inspired you, guided you, believed in you. Were they born with it, or did they live in a way that reflected purpose? Were they the kind of people who kept showing up even when it wasn't easy? Were they the kind who asked more of themselves, not because they weren't enough, but because they believed in more? That's the heart of the 1% mindset. It's not rooted in hustle. It's not about never being satisfied. It's about being grounded in your why, the reason you choose to keep growing in the first place. And the reason matters because without a why, the 1% feels like pressure. It feels like you're never doing enough, never measuring up. But with a why, the 1% becomes purpose. It becomes a quiet commitment to your future self, to your potential. Not to prove anything, but to become someone worth following, worth trusting, worth remembering. Here's where most people get it wrong. They wait for motivation. They wait for inspiration. But if you're always waiting to feel ready, you'll never start. Growth doesn't come from moments of inspiration. It comes from habits of discipline, from choosing to take one more step even when no one's watching, even when it doesn't feel like it's working yet. That's what makes the 1% mindset powerful, because it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond. It gives you control not over the world, but over your attitude, your effort, your choices. And when you start owning those things, you realize something incredible. You're not stuck, you're not behind, you're not broken. You're just in process. And process is beautiful if you let it be.
The truth is, most people will never choose the 1%. They'll wait for the weekend, wait for the new year, wait until they feel more confident. And in the waiting, they'll lose time they can never get back. But some people, just a few, don't just change their results, they change their identity. They change how they lead, how they love, how they live. You see, the 1% mindset isn't just about achievement, it's about character. It's about becoming the kind of person who can handle success when it comes, who doesn't crumble under pressure, who doesn't need applause to feel validated, who doesn't seek perfection, but progress. And that's the real reward, not the outcome, but the person you become along the way. So don't chase the big win. Don't wait for the big break. Instead, choose the small win, the daily effort, the unseen improvements. Choose to believe that your best days are ahead and that each step, no matter how small, is taking you closer. Because you never know which 1% will change everything. Maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe it's the day you almost gave up but didn't. Growth is not a one-time event. It's not a finish line. It's a mindset, a posture of humility, of curiosity, of courage. It's not about doing more. It's about becoming more. And once you begin to see your life through that lens, once you stop measuring yourself by what you've done and start measuring by who you're becoming, everything changes. Not overnight, not all at once, but always one step at a time, 1% every day. There's a story about a man who was offered a choice: take $3 million in cash today, or take 1 penny that doubles in value every day for 31 days. Most people, without hesitation, choose the cash. It's fast, it's big, it's immediate. But if you run the math, something surprising happens. That penny doubling daily becomes over $10 million by the end of the 31 days. And it's not until around day 29 that the numbers start to really take off. That's the power of compound growth. It's slow, it's invisible, and then suddenly it's undeniable. The same principle applies to who we become. The changes that truly matter rarely announce themselves with fanfare. They begin in silence, with small decisions, small actions, a single step forward. And at first, nothing seems different, nothing seems to change. That's where most people stop. They believe it isn't working, they give up because the result is an instant. But the few who understand the compound effect know that transformation is happening beneath the surface. Even when it can't be seen, they trust the process, not because of how quickly it pays off, but because of what it's building over time. We've been taught to look for the big wins, to chase the breakthrough moments, to wait for the magical pivot when everything suddenly changes. But life rarely works that way. It's not about leaps, it's about layers. It's not about sudden explosions, it's about steady elevation. The danger with chasing only the big wins is that it blinds us to the power of the small ones. We overlook the value of reading 5 pages, of walking for 10 minutes, of saying thank you, of listening more closely, of choosing kindness over ego. We dismiss those things as too small to matter. But here's the truth: those small things are the seeds of the extraordinary.
They are the habits that shape identity, the steps that form a path. Over time, they compound not just into better outcomes, but into a better version of ourselves. The compound effect isn't just about repetition, it's about consistency. There's a difference. Repetition is doing something again and again. Consistency is doing it with intention, even when it's hard, even when no one else is doing it. It's what builds trust with others and with yourself. It's what creates momentum in your character, not just your performance. Think about a relationship. No one falls in love because of one grand gesture. People fall in love because of the little things: checking in, showing up, being present. Trust is built through repeated action over time. So is leadership. So is excellence. So is personal growth. But the trouble is, we're wired for immediacy. We want the before and after. We want the glow up, the transformation montage. But real life isn't edited like a movie. Real life is lived in the in-between, in the daily showing up, in the quiet grind, in the small decisions that no one sees. Improving yourself by 1% every day might not look like much in the beginning. You may not feel different after day 1 or even day 10, but stay with it, because day 31 will only come if you commit through day 3, day 13, day 23. That's the cost of growth. It's not pain, it's patience. There's something beautiful that happens when you commit to the process even without immediate reward. You start to respect the work. You begin to trust yourself, not because you're seeing results yet, but because you know you're honoring the process. That's where self-confidence is born, not in outcomes, but in effort, in the quiet pride of showing up for yourself. Every time you choose to get 1% better, you cast a vote for the person you're becoming. And like any election, it's not about one vote, it's about accumulation. Over time, those votes add up. They build an identity. They tell the story of who you are. And the best part? It's never too late to start. That's the beauty of the compound effect. It doesn't care where you begin. It only asks that you begin. You don't need to overhaul your life. You don't need to wait for January. You just need to do one thing today that makes you slightly better than yesterday. Maybe it's choosing water over soda. Maybe it's texting someone a kind word. Maybe it's writing down a thought instead of letting it drift away. Maybe it's doing 5 push-ups. Maybe it's apologizing first. Whatever it is, do it on purpose, and then do it again. That's where the shift begins. You see, 1% isn't about chasing perfection, it's about building momentum. The people who achieve extraordinary things aren't necessarily the smartest or the strongest. They're the ones who kept going, who stayed consistent long enough for their effort to multiply, who didn't stop just because no one noticed yet. And then one day, people do notice. They call it talent. They call it natural ability. But what they're really seeing is compounded discipline, stacked decisions, invisible progress made visible. So here's the question. Are you willing to go unnoticed long enough for your growth to become undeniable? That's what the compound effect demands. Humility, patience, faith, the ability to keep doing the right thing, even when the wrong thing is easier, louder, or faster. Because the truth is, everything meaningful takes time. Trust, relationships, mastery. They can't be rushed, they can't be faked, but they can be built one decision, one effort, 1% at a time.
And if you stay with it, if you're bold enough to believe that small steps matter, you won't just change what you do, you'll change what you believe about yourself. You'll stop waiting for the breakthrough and start becoming the kind of person who creates one. Not with luck, not with shortcuts, but with grit, with grace, with steady, quiet growth. Because that's where greatness lives, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, not in the loud moments, but in the small ones. 1% every day until it's no longer small, until it becomes who you are. We all want to win. It's human. We want to get there, whatever there is, the promotion, the recognition, the success, the version of ourselves we imagine when we close our eyes. And it's not wrong to want that, but the danger isn't in having goals, it's in becoming so obsessed with the finish line that we forget to run the race well. We live in a culture that celebrates outcomes, we applaud results, we reward performance and praise those who reach the top. But the problem is, if we only love the outcome, we'll hate most of the journey. And the journey is where life actually happens. You don't fall in love with fitness by loving six-pack abs, you fall in love with how it feels to move, to sweat, to push yourself. You don't become a great writer by chasing a bestseller, you become a great writer by loving the craft of sitting down, facing the blank page, and finding your voice. You don't build a strong relationship by dreaming of a perfect love story, you build it by choosing each other daily through highs and lows, through small gestures and quiet commitment. The outcome is a moment, the process is a life. Most people fall in love with the dream but not the discipline. They want the prize but not the practice. They want to be celebrated but not shaped. And it makes sense. Outcomes are tangible, they're exciting. You can point to them, post about them, feel the rush when you finally arrive. But here's the thing, if you only fall in love with the outcome, you'll be disappointed, because even when you get there, it won't feel the way you hoped unless you respected the road that got you there. When people reach a big goal, there's often a strange moment of emptiness. It's subtle, and they don't always talk about it, but it's there. A quiet, "Is this all there is?" And that feeling doesn't come from the goal being too small, it comes from the process being ignored. When you don't learn to love the work, the reward can feel hollow. But when you fall in love with the process, everything changes. Every day becomes meaningful. Every step becomes part of something bigger. You don't just grind, you grow. You don't just endure, you engage. You start measuring success not by how fast you arrive, but by how deeply you're becoming. Falling in love with the process doesn't mean the work gets easier. It means it becomes worth it. It means you stop chasing motivation and start building discipline, because motivation is a spark, but discipline is a fire. And that fire is what keeps you going on the days you don't feel like it, on the days you're tired, on the days it feels like nothing's working.
That's when the process matters most, when the results haven't shown up yet, when you're doing the right things and it feels like no one notices. But you keep going, you keep building, not because of what's at the end, but because of who you're becoming along the way. I once heard someone say, success isn't owned, it's rented, and rent is due every day. That's what falling in love with the process is. It's paying the rent, it's honoring the craft, it's choosing to grow, not just to win. The people we admire most, the ones who seem to move with purpose, with clarity, with confidence, they're not driven by the finish line. They're fueled by the process. They care about how they show up, how they build, how they treat people along the way. They're not just aiming for an outcome, they're building a life of intention. Yes, there will be days you don't feel like showing up, days when progress feels invisible, days when you question whether it's even worth it. But that's part of the process too. Falling in love with the process doesn't mean you always enjoy it. It means you've decided it matters enough to keep going anyway. There's something sacred about showing up when no one's clapping, about doing the work in the quiet, about trusting that the seeds you're planting today will become something beautiful even if it takes time to bloom, because it will take time. Everything meaningful does. And the truth is, if you rush the process, you rob yourself of the very thing that makes the outcome meaningful. The process is where you develop character, where you build habits, where you face your fears, test your limits, learn resilience. The outcome might give you something to show, but the process gives you someone to be. So ask yourself, do you only want to arrive or do you want to become? Because those are two different paths. If all you want is the trophy, you might cut corners, you might burn out, you might get there but lose a part of yourself in the way. But if you care about becoming, you'll take the long road, the honest road, the one where you grow deeper, not just higher. And here's the paradox. The more you fall in love with the process, the more the outcomes tend to take care of themselves. Not because they're guaranteed, but because you're becoming the kind of person who earns them, not just reaches them. Fall in love with the early mornings, the repetition, the reflection. Fall in love with the learning, even when it's messy. Fall in love with the discomfort, because it means you're stretching. Fall in love with the small wins, the incremental growth, the silent victories. Because when you love the process, you don't need to be at the top to feel fulfilled. You don't need applause to feel proud. You don't need permission to feel worthy. You're not waiting to become someone, you already are. You're just refining, sharpening, evolving, one step, one decision, one day at a time. And that, in the end, is where real success lives, not in the prize, but in the process that shaped you. If you've ever picked up a guitar, you know something. You can strum for 5 hours straight on day one, and your fingers will hurt, your brain will be fried, and by the end of it, you might feel like you did something impressive. But come back in a week having not practiced at all, and you'll find your progress has faded. On the other hand, if you play for just 15 minutes every day, quietly, imperfectly, patiently, you'll build muscle memory. You'll build flow. You'll become the kind of person who plays the guitar. That's the difference between intensity and consistency. Intensity wants to go big. It wants to change everything overnight. It's loud, it's emotional, it burns bright and fast. But consistency is quiet, doesn't care about flair, doesn't need an audience. It's not romantic, but it works. Most people live in cycles of intensity. They wait for the moment they feel fired up. New Year's Eve, Monday morning, after a breakdown, after a breakup. Something pushes them and they go all in. They push hard, change everything at once, overhaul their habits, set huge goals, and for a while, it feels amazing. They post about it, talk about it, they're back on track. But a few weeks go by, maybe a month, and the intensity starts to fade. Life gets busy, the motivation dips, and slowly, everything they started begins to unravel. Not because they weren't serious, but because intensity doesn't last. It burns out. Now contrast that with consistency, someone who chooses to do one small thing every day, no matter what. It's not exciting at first, it's not dramatic, but it's sustainable. And over time, that consistency becomes identity. Intensity is about what you do when you're motivated. Consistency is about what you do when you're not. And that's where the real growth happens. Ask anyone who's built something meaningful. a business, a body, a relationship, a reputation. They didn't do it in one grand gesture. They did it in 1,000 small ones. They did it on the days they didn't feel like it, on the days it was inconvenient, on the days when no one clapped, because they understood something essential. Consistency compounds. What you do repeatedly becomes who you are. Think about trust. You don't earn trust by one big moment of honesty. You earn it through a pattern of truthfulness, showing up, following through again and again. Trust isn't built in intensity, it's built in consistency. The same goes for leadership. People don't follow leaders because of one powerful speech. They follow because of who that leader is daily, how they treat people when no one's looking, how they act when things go wrong, the consistent character they display. In relationships, love is not proven through one big anniversary gift. It's shown in the way you pay attention, the way you listen, the way you remember, the way you stay, day in, day out, through silence, through stress, through ordinary days. That's where love lives, in consistency. The same is true with personal growth. You don't become wise from reading one book in one night. You become wise by learning consistently, reflecting consistently, showing up to your life intentionally every single day. And here's the truth most people miss. Consistency isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. You will mess up, you will miss a day, you will fall short. But consistency isn't broken by a slip. It's broken when the slip becomes a story you believe. A story like, I failed, so why bother? I missed the day, so I may as well give up. But consistency says, just start again. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to be flawless, you just have to keep going. Because the goal isn't to be intense, it's to be reliable. Reliable to yourself, to your commitments, to the vision you have for who you want to become. Intensity might impress people, but consistency earns respect, especially self-respect. There's a reason most New Year's resolutions fail by February. People go all in, thinking that intensity equals commitment. But true commitment isn't how hard you go on day 1, it's how often you show up on day 21, day 50, day 100. Improving yourself by 1% every day doesn't mean waking up and turning your world upside down. It means doing the small thing, reading a page, going for the walk, having the hard conversation, saying no to the thing that doesn't align. Doing that today and then doing it again tomorrow. Small acts done with intention, done consistently, that's what leads to real change. We all want the transformation, but the ones who achieve it are the ones who embrace repetition. They understand that doing something well once is easy, doing it well daily is rare. There's something sacred about showing up, not when you feel like it, but because you said you would. That kind of follow-through builds internal trust. And when you trust yourself, you start to believe that you can handle what's coming, that you can take the next step, that you can become the person you've always wanted to be, not by one leap, but by 1,000 steady steps. That's the irony. The world tells us to be explosive, to go big or go home. But the truth is, the people who go far go small, repeatedly. They find their rhythm, they build systems, they make it a lifestyle, not a phase. So stop chasing intensity, start building consistency. And remember, your future isn't shaped by what you do once, it's shaped by what you do every day. That's how legacies are built, not by a moment, but by a pattern, a rhythm, a commitment to show up, especially when it's hard. And that's what separates those who wish from those who become. Not effort, but consistency, 1% every day. We have a strange relationship with perfection. From a young age, we're taught to aim for it. Straight A's, gold stars, the flawless performance, the perfect score. We're rewarded not just for doing well, but for doing it without error. So we carry that mindset into adulthood, into our goals, our growth, our self-worth. And the problem with perfection is that it's impossible, but worse, it's paralyzing. Perfection whispers that if it's not flawless, it doesn't count, that if you can't do it right, don't do it at all, that mistakes are proof you're not good enough. And so we wait, we plan less, we delay starting, or we start and give up the moment we stumble. Because if it's not perfect, why bother? That's the lie that keeps people stuck. But the journey of becoming better, 1% better every day, isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about having the courage to show up, do your best, fail sometimes, and still come back tomorrow. Progress is messy, growth is clumsy, and that's how it's supposed to be. A baby learning to walk doesn't fall once and quit. They wobble, they fall, they giggle, they get up, and eventually they walk. Not because they figured out how to be perfect, but because they embraced imperfection long enough to grow. But somewhere along the way, we start to fear falling. We start to fear looking foolish. We confuse failure with finality. So we stop trying new things unless we're sure we'll be great. We stop speaking up unless we know we'll be right. We stop risking unless we're guaranteed the reward. That's not strength, that's fear in disguise. Perfection is not a standard. It's a trap, a moving target, a finish line that gets further the closer you get to it. And if you measure yourself by it, you'll never feel like you're enough. But when you shift your focus to progress, you free yourself to grow. Progress asks a different question. Not did I get it right, but did I get better? Not did I win, but did I learn? Not was I perfect, but was I present? 1% improvement each day doesn't require perfection. It requires intention, the willingness to make a small, deliberate move toward better, not best, just better. Maybe that means showing up to the gym for 20 minutes even though yesterday you skipped. Maybe it means writing a paragraph even though it's not brilliant. Maybe it means saying, "I'm sorry," even though it's awkward. Maybe it means pausing before reacting, listening instead of defending, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. These aren't massive acts, they're micro acts, adjustments, but done consistently, they shift your trajectory. That's what progress is, a direction, not a destination. And sometimes progress looks like standing still, just not quitting. Sometimes progress means resting instead of burning out, saying no instead of pleasing everyone, letting go instead of holding tight to something that's no longer right for you. Because progress isn't linear, it loops, it spirals, it stutters forward. And that's okay, that's normal. You are not behind, you are not broken, you're just human. When we embrace progress over perfection, we learn to give ourselves grace. And when we give ourselves grace, we create space to improve, to stumble, to reflect, to rise. That space becomes the breeding ground for growth. That's where resilience lives. That's where confidence grows, not from never falling, but from realizing that falling doesn't define you. You don't need to get it right every time. You need to keep going. And the beautiful part? When you shift from perfection to progress, you also become more present, because perfection is future-obsessed. It's always measuring where you should be. Progress is rooted in the now. It lives in the decision you make today, the effort you give in this moment. It teaches you to value the step, not just the summit. You start to find pride in the process, joy in the journey. You learn that you can be a work in progress and still be proud of who you are. And you begin to notice something. The people who inspire us most are not perfect. They're real. They've fallen, they failed, they've kept going. Their strength isn't in their flawlessness. It's in their faithfulness to the mission, to the work, to the belief that they can grow. That can be you. You don't need to have it all together to move forward. You just need to be willing. Willing to try, willing to get back up, willing to make one small move toward who you want to become. Because real transformation doesn't come from a perfect plan. It comes from imperfect action, repeated, refined, respected. So take the pressure off. Let go of the need to be perfect and lean into progress. Celebrate the 1%. Own the tiny shift. Applaud the effort, even when no one else sees it. Because every time you show up, even imperfectly, you're building something stronger than perfection. You're building character, you're building momentum, you're building a life you're proud to live. One decision, one moment, 1% at a time. And that's not just improvement, that's evolution. And you don't need to be perfect to be proud of your progress.